Amelia Pelaez is one of the most well-known of the Cuban modernists, noted for her abstract images. Cuba was a Spanish colony until 1902, though the push towards independence had been developing for years prior. Cuban artistic themes began to develop in the 19th century, when Romanticism spurred a quest to develop a national identity. Following in the footsteps of the Romantic poets, artists became convinced that their role was to discover national values via art. As such, the creation of an artistic imagery and vocabulary that was distinctly Cuban was more vital than experimentation with modern forms and techniques. One of the artists that would contribute immensely to this end was Amelia Pelaez. Amelia was born in 1896 in Yaguajay, a small town in the north of Cuba. After the family moved to La Habana in 1916, she was enrolled at the Academia de San Alejandro, a relatively conservative art school founded in 1818, to which women were only admitted after 1879. There, she studied under the artist Leopoldo Romagnac. After graduating, Amelia spent 6 months with the Art Students League in New York. In 1926, she left for Paris in the company of her friend Lidia Cabrera, the Cuban ethnologist. In Paris, she studied under the Russian Alexandra Exter, and her career blossomed. Her first solo exhibition was held in 1933 at the Galerie Zac in Paris. In 1927, Amelia participated in the New Art exhibit in Havana, organized by the country's artistic vanguardia. She was one of 18 artists, including 6 women, to show work. The exhibit was marked by the influence of post-impressionism, cubism, fauvism, and surrealism, with a decidedly Cuban flavor given the depictions of Cuban landscapes and people. This group of artists became known as the generation of 1927. One of her early paintings, Flores Amarillos, or Yellow Flowers, showcased the geometricism so prevalent in the modern style. The flowers appear against a highly stylized background in what appears to be a vase on a tablecloth. Although she uses bright red and yellow, she has not yet begun to experiment with the bright colors that would become her trademark later in her career. This painting of a woman, circa 1933, reveals Amelia's strong tendency toward stylization. However, in this experimental phase of her career, she still had not quite approached abstraction. In 1934, Amelia returned to Cuba permanently. She had been supported as an expatriate artist by the sugar boom of the 1920s, but after it ended, the money ran out and she returned home. There, she lived with her mother and sisters in La Víbora, an early 20th century neighborhood of Havana. Amelia would remain there until her death, never marrying or having children. When she returned, she brought with her European modernism. Amelia became a teacher at the San Alejandro Academy, the first woman to be admitted to its faculty. Cuban art did not begin to be appreciated at home until after World War II, after which point the Cuban School of Artists formed, with Amelia at its center. Its key aspects were modern European techniques derived from artists such as Picasso, Matisse, and Braque, with elements taken from Cuba's landscape and rich folkloric background. One of the hallmarks of the Cuban school has been described as a great exuberance of color. Amelia began to develop her signature Cuban imagery shortly after her return from Europe. In the 1936 painting Mar Pacifico, Amelia paints a highly stylized hibiscus flower, with a modern technique that approaches abstraction without actually becoming abstract. The bright flower stands out on a dark backdrop, a hallmark of her early style. This painting can be compared with her 1943 painting of hibiscus flowers. Her colors have brightened considerably, paying homage to Fauvism, and she has begun to use a thick black outline, a feature which would become one of her major identifying traits. Another painting from that year, a still life entitled Florero, or Flower Vase, reveals her continued trend toward geometric abstraction. The black outline is still utilized, although to the extent that it rather overwhelms the painting. The 1944 painting El Pianista, or The Piano Player, reveals a strong debt to Picasso as well as to Braque. The drab coloring was a hallmark of the European artists for a period, as was the highly stylized figure. Picasso's influence and Amelia's continued interest in Cubism can also be seen in another painting from that year, simply titled Feminine Figure. Her colors, though still subdued, have become a bit stronger, and the strong black line used in the center of the painting emerges as a trait of paintings to come, although it is still in an experimental state in this piece. Amelia's colors had continued to become more vibrant by 1947's Maternidad, or Maternity, another painting which resembles the works of Picasso stylistically. The painting features a mother with her infant. In the 1950s, Amelia moved away from painting human figures and using the European style in favor of a more decidedly Cuban path. Throughout her life in Cuba, Amelia kept a lush garden. For the most part, she remained cloistered in her house, using the garden as inspiration for her sensuous Cuban paintings. Favorite subjects in her mature period were organic, fruit, fish, and flowers, such as in this still life from 1946. The thick black Baroque line pays homage to the decorative ironwork found in the windows of old Havana, while the bright tones she used matched the tropical colors found in her garden, which existed as a microcosm of the Cuban countryside. By the time this still life was painted in 1955, Amelia had almost completely defined her style, the sinuous black line, the strong colors, and near complete abstraction. This is evident as well in 1960's Pez, or Fish. The colors and the subject matter served to characterize the country she so loved. The move toward abstraction continued with Still Life in Blue in 1964. The composition appears to be organic in nature, but it is difficult to tell exactly what is being featured. The same is true in 1967's Still Life with Pineapple. Without being told explicitly that the focal point of the piece is a pineapple, it might be easily missed. This piece can be considered a summary of Amelia's career. Bright colors, sensuous outline, and tropical matter, which all serve to characterize Cuba with modern artistic abstraction. Amelia continued to paint until her death in 1968. In the opinion of Alfred Barr, founding director of the Museum of Modern Art in New York, Amelia helped to bring Latin American art into the 20th century.